Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me once again, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on is today we're going to talk about Wicked, which I didn't get to talk to you last week. Not going to talk about Life is Strange Double Exposure because I don't really have a ton of great things to say about it, so might as well just focus on the positive. But Cam will be talking about Moana 2 and Arcane. Both seasons of Arcane?
I've seen both seasons of Arcane, but I will be giving a bit more of a general overlook of both seasons and the property itself.
Yeah, cool. So that's what we're going to be chatting about today. A little bit of kind of post-Thanksgiving, the couple of the big movies of the Thanksgiving holiday weekend rush stuff, and then Arcane, relatively recent. Season 2 came out not too long ago. I saw like all the promotional stuff with Haley Steinfeld and Ella Purcell kind of doing red carpets. Like I feel like a couple weeks ago. So, cool. Stay tuned for time codes for all that stuff. If you like the show, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast everywhere you can. All that fun stuff. So starting off with Wicked, you've not seen Wicked yet, right?
I have not seen it, no.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I've seen the play, I've read the book, I know the story of Wicked very well. Yes. So I'm aware of the Wicked as a property intimately, but I have yet to see the movie.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for those theater geeks to not be in the theaters when I go see it so I can watch it in silence.
I've seen it twice now, and that was not a problem at all.
Was it? Okay, cool.
Yeah. No. People are being chill. People are being cool.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no issues. Both times at the Harkins up at the mall by us.
I feel like this week with Wicked, people are like, I can't believe you haven't seen it. I'm like, I think you have to understand, I was a kid who did theater. I was not a theater kid.
Yeah.
Theater was not my intimate passion. It's something I love, but it's not something that I was obsessed over.
I think they've done a good enough job getting the word out that there are going to be sing-along specific screenings starting around Christmas that people that want to go and have that experience will go back and have that experience. This time around, they're going and they're seeing the experience that has been put on the film here.
I've seen Mamma Mia in both ways, and both are fantastic. Sing-along version works wonderful, so I'm excited for the sing-along version as well of Wicked.
So Wicked, I went and saw Wicked opening weekend, and then enjoyed it enough that I just went and saw it again Tuesday this last week, and annoyingly ended up missing the first few minutes because they only had 2 to 3 people working concessions at 9:00 at night that night. So I sat in line for 15 minutes waiting to get my soda, and then walked in and the first minute of the movie had already started. I was I thought I'd be good because actually I guess I was waiting in line for 30 minutes because I got there 15 minutes before the movie started. And I still missed, the 10, 15 minutes of trailers or whatever. But yeah, that was a Harkins failure on their part. And admittedly, I did not factor in that Moana 2 screenings were starting that early. I was under the impression that, they were going to start Wednesday going into the 5-day weekend kind of thing. But no, I just everybody was there to see either Moana 2, Wicked, or Gladiator 2, and so everybody's full, and they had very few staff members around.
You didn't do the Glicked weekend?
No. I thought that was a very stupid, forced attempt from
the Barbenheimer phenomenon.
Yeah. It was Hollywood Reporter writers or Variety writers or something trying to make that a thing, and it's stop making fetch a thing.
First off, great reference. Second off, absolutely correct. Yeah. Barbenheimer happened naturally, organically on Twitter.
This was hey, we're gonna try and it's the same idea, big female skewing audience versus a male skewing audience. It's that's it. No.
You missed the point of what Oppenheimer was for people, and you missed the point of what Barbie was for people.
Yeah. Anyway, so Wicked, I similar in terms of I've seen the musical. I got to see it. It's one of the handful of shows I saw when my sister and I went to New York after she graduated high school. Went to New York for a week and saw Moving Out, Rent, Spamalot, Avenue Q, and Wicked. So it was a fun week filled of theater because we were only there for a week, so we basically saw a show every night that we were there. Save like
That sounds insane. I'm so jealous. I've never been to New York City, so.
And Wicked was the one we bought while we were there. Like everything else, like we had the tickets for ahead of time, and like we planned everything. And Wicked is the one I remember like having because this is 2005. So like, yeah, I don't have a smartphone or anything. So I called my folks and had them look and buy tickets from like our hotel room like a night or two before the show, and they found tickets and were able to make that work for us. So yeah, I went and got to see that. Ben Vereen was the wizard. That was a neat thing, especially if you know Pippin and Steven Schwartz, and Ben Vereen was like the MC of back in that show in the 70s or whatever. I don't think I had that context at the time because I was still a new theater student in college. But it was still like, so it was more cool seeing that in retrospect. But we may or may not have had like a bootleg recording on our computer for years that like my sister and I would like watch
Nice.
And enjoy. Yeah, it's like I've seen it, one or two times when it's come through town. I remember in college going and seeing it with a friend of mine. We did like it was a 2-show day, like a Saturday or Sunday or something. We tried to get the like student rush tickets, or the lottery tickets.
Yeah.
At the matinee, didn't get them. Went and grabbed dinner, or went and like grabbed lunch or something. Came back for the evening show. She ended up getting pulled for the lottery for that one, so we got like front row seats for that for like $10 a piece. Then we went and grabbed dinner, came back and watched the show, kind of thing. So that was very cool. So yeah, big fan of the show. It's always been like a delight. And this is a movie that I've been tracking for a while.
I've been staying real blind to it. I heard about the initial casting, but it's really like I've seen it twice as well. Not on Broadway, I just mentioned, but once when it was touring at Pantages Theater in LA, my family, like, Wicked means a lot to my family, especially my sisters. It's like the show for my sisters. Mamma Mia is my mom's show, but Wicked is my sister's show. All three of my sisters, like, they know the soundtrack back and forth, but Loathing in particular is like the song that my middle sister and younger sister gravitated to because they are definitively Elphaba and Galinda, thank you. I was like, I'm blanking on the name right now because I just want to say Ariana. But Galinda and Elphaba coded, particularly. My middle sister is Elphaba coded to heck, and my younger sister is Galinda coded to heck. So my little sister who lives in Reno actually flew down as a surprise for them to go see it that weekend. And I was cool not doing that because that meant I got to spend some awesome time with my nieces and nephew. So,
but you.
No, we didn't. I didn't do that. We didn't do that because we.
I was gonna say, but you didn't go see it in the Pantages. Wait.
No, sorry, no. That was for the movie.
Oh, the movie. Gotcha.
The movie. Sorry about that. No, Pantages was. I was in high school. My little sister, myself, my parents, we went to go see it at Pantages. It was incredible. When my parents moved to California after I graduated high school, they had already pre-bought third row tickets for it at Gamage. And so I was like, I need to find a friend who is super into theater. I had a couple friends. I picked one. She and I had lunch. We went to the matinee showing of it, and it was, I'm just kidding, not as good as Pantages. The seats were way better than I had at Pantages. We were in the balcony seats at Pantages, but it was also my first time seeing the show. The dragon comes alive in the show at the end of Act 1. I didn't know that, so I was like blown away.
Sure.
Seeing Wicked your first time is just a magical experience. No pun not intended, but also kind of intended. Like, truly magical experience. So
yeah,
I'm curious how this movie fared in comparison to we both know the show very well. We know the material very well. We know the song very well. This is also the role that like catapulted. In my mind, I know Rent. She was in Rent before, but outside of the theater zeitgeist, I felt like most people knew who Idina Menzel was before Frozen. Frozen like cemented her as like a Broadway celebrity to the mainstream. But
yeah, I would say Idina was already a well-known quantity because of Rent and because of how big Rent had been.
Yeah.
By the time Wicked rolls around, this is and same. It was the same for Kristen Chenoweth, but I knew Kristen Chenoweth less because I didn't like. She was in like You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and stuff like that. I didn't know the stuff she had been in, whereas I knew Rent very intimately by the time Wicked comes around.
I knew her from the Bewitched movie with Nicole Kidman and Will Ferrell.
Again, I mean, like, that's timeline wise, I believe that comes well after Wicked. Because like in retrospect, I'm like, oh, I know Kristen Chenoweth from late seasons of The West Wing.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, that's because she dated Aaron Sorkin for a while or whatever. It's like, oh, that's weird. But yeah, the movie itself, yeah, it's a movie that it's been in like development limbo for so long, and it was like, they didn't want to make it into a movie because they're still raking in millions of dollars every week on Broadway. Why would you want to like risk, cutting off that because, oh, I don't need to spend $100 to go see it in the theater live. I can just watch it, on my streaming service at home kind of thing. But yeah, they finally made it. My biggest gripe with it for a long time has been that they two-parted it, and that they make this is only Act 1, that it's going to be a year before Act 2 comes out, Wicked Part 2. And then furthermore, I hate the the marketing execs that, you see this with all sorts of things these days, are like pseudo hiding the fact that it's a musical in their marketing material, and definitely hid the fact that this is a part 1 in their marketing.
Oh, 100%.
Like, the marketing just says Wicked. It's not until like, okay, the opening number happens and then you get the Wicked, credits part 1, that it's like,
that sucks.
There are
so
some
dumb.
people that are going to be going in, and 5 minutes in they're going to be surprised and like, what? That said, this, I'm of the mind that even though this is the first act of the movie, it's still it serves as a part 1 in the same way that like Empire Strikes Back serves as a part 1 for Return of the Jedi's part 2. Like it ends with enough cliffhangers that there's more of the story to be told, but it also has like characters have a complete arc, and they have full beats, and that's inherent in the act structure of the original show. This is a very faithful to the original show kind of movie. If anything, it's like they just add spectacle and spectacle and spectacle to it.
Cool. Okay.
I tweeted out, or I posted on Blue Sky. I don't know what I guess like some people are calling them skeets. I don't know what we're calling them. But I posted to Blue Sky after seeing.
Would you just call them tweets? Since the other company threw
since
away?
They don't want tweets.
They don't want tweets. We'll take tweets.
Yeah. So I posted on Blue Sky the notion that like watching this felt as magical as seeing it 20 years ago in New York.
Oh, that's awesome.
Was really cool. Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba is phenomenal. Ariana Grande Butera, because that's how she's credited in the credits. So I want to honor that she is like thrown her, I believe, father's like part of her lineage into her credits on this one. She's great as Galinda, and the pairing of the two is such beautiful, genuine, lovely chemistry.
Awesome.
I've watched it twice now, and both times the number at the Oz Dust Ballroom during Dancing Through Life, where it's everybody is ostracizing Elphaba, and Glinda finally like reaches out like an olive branch of friendship, is such a beautiful moment that I've teared up and cried just both times watching it, because of the performances and because of the honesty and emotion and beauty on Cynthia Erivo's face and Ariana Grande Butera's reactions and everything. So they're phenomenal. They're killing it the entire thing. Jonathan Bailey is a lot of fun as Fiero.
That's such a fun part. Like, you got to get somebody extremely charismatic to like really elevate that part.
Yeah,
because it needs that inherent fun note to it. Because you also need that, but you also need that dramatic note for like that under the bridge scene.
Yep.
Like,
yeah,
it's I love Wicked.
Yeah, performances are great all around. I would say maybe the two weaker links, but it's like they're great and they're bringing a fun energy to it themselves. Michelle Yeoh, I think by her own admission, isn't the strongest voice, but she's also Madame Morrible. She doesn't have to be the strongest voice. She just gets to be kind of the like oddball professor that takes Elphaba under her wing, and maybe there's a little bit something more sinister that we'll see kind of over Act 2 or Part 2. And then Jeff Goldblum's in there being Jeff Goldblum as the Wiz, but it works for this. It works for the Wiz, and the Wiz has often been like kind of a stunt casty role. Originally it was Joel Grey, and then, as I said, Ben Vereen on Broadway. So it's like, let's bring in a big name for this character who isn't going to especially in this movie, he has his number, Sentimental Man, and that's about it. He's there for 15 minutes at the end of the movie kind of thing, but will obviously play a bigger part in part 2. All those great, and the real trio of Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande Butera, and Jonathan Bailey as Fiero. A lot of fun, great setting up for like the love triangle stuff that you get in the film. Fiero fully like leaning into like bisexual king energy in this.
Yes.
Like as Dancing Through Life, he's flirting with everybody and shiz. And it's like, oh,
the way it should be.
You are sexy AF. I've only watched the first season of Bridgerton, but like it was the connection of like, oh, that's where I know him from.
Yeah, he is a,
and that was like that wasn't his season of Bridgerton.
Nope.
Like that. So I like. There's been a lot of fun also around this of like watching a lot of like the press interviews that these people are doing behind the scenes, because it also just fuels like, oh, they really became like a cohort and a friendship, community on the set, on the film. A lot of the film, very practical work. That was a big concern of mine. Yeah. Because it looks like it's a CGI fest. So I wasn't sure how real it was going to be. It's like, there's CGI like accentuating things, and like the flying monkeys are CGI, or sure. Dr. Dilliman is a CGI goat, because they don't do like man walking around with like a goat outfit on or something like that. They're trying to give us the purity of magical creatures, not being human hybrids, just being animals that are magical. And another thing that this movie does a really great job of is like, it not only is it like being a pure homage to the stage version, but it's also a lot of direct ties and references to the Wizard of Oz film. Cool. But it also like updates things. So like Munchkinland isn't full of small people. It is like normal people, just like it is in the musical, kind of, or like a mix. There are some little people kind of scattered around, but they're also not only in Munchkinland. Like you'll see some of them walking around. Because part 2 has a story point about that, which is yeah. But yeah, lots of great stuff there. But there's also an establishing shot, because if you know the musical, it kind of starts at the end of The Wizard of Oz. Good news, she's dead. No one mourns the wicked. Blah blah blah. So we start with like flying out of the Wicked Witch's castle towards Oz, and you see like Dorothy and friends going back down the yellow brick road to Oz. And the lion is walking on all fours like a lion, not on 2 legs like a man in a lion suit. Oh, gotcha. Okay. Cool. So yeah, it's that kind of stuff. It's like, oh no, they're updating the Wizard of Oz references to fall in line with like this world that they're playing with. Good. Okay, that's awesome. I'm cool with that. I'm totally cool with that. Yeah. But yeah, so much fun. John M. Chu is the director of this. Who first thing I probably saw his was probably Crazy Rich Asians, I think. But that's a great movie. So yeah, and more recently he did the In the Heights adaptation, which I absolutely loved. And went back and like rewatched after this, because it's criminally underviewed. I think it was Absolutely. One of those early movies that came out as like people were going back to the movie theaters. I'm trying. I think it's also criminally underrated as a musical as well. Too, yeah. It doesn't get the Hamilton love that his Lin-Manuel Miranda gets. Yeah, people are like, well, Hamilton's like, if you haven't at least listen to In the Heights, you are missing out on a lot of the touchstones that like he pulls from for future work. Yeah. It's like he was not an unknown person before Hamilton. Like, correct. He'd already made waves with In the Heights, and it's a great show. And John M. Chu does a great job at adapting that for for the film. In particular, the big thing that In the Heights does great, that Wicked also does great, are big musical chorus numbers. Like there's 40 people on stage doing the dances and doing the choreography. It's not like, okay, here's 5 people and then there's like CGI, messed around it or something like that. It is like real people. They're really there on location. They built a lot of these big grandiose sets. There is CGI in terms of like, the backgrounds around Oz or something like that. But I mean, one of the big things that they touted, if you've seen the trailers, like the poppy fields are like millions of planted tulips that were really physically planted, that they really did in like a rainbow format as an homage to Over the Rainbow.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
So there's a lot of real practicality in the trailer. You see at one point Elphaba getting on a train to go to Oz, and Glinda joins her. That train car was like really physically built. It has probably been like sussed up with CGI shoot or something like that, but it was a real practical thing on location that they could go to and touch. They've touched on the idea that a lot of the physical environments are there. It's probably most notable in something like Dancing Through Life, where they do the whole number, or they do the first half of the number in like the Shiz library, and it's fantastical and has like instead of just a boring like ladder that will go across a bookshelf like this, like Beauty and the Beast style or something like that, they play with like 3 dimensions, and it's like, it just kind of spins and goes in like a 360. Cool. And so you can spin that ladder and have people running up and then running down as it pivots, or you can have Fiyero doing the splits and like having his legs like in the rungs, so when he's flipped upside down and singing Dancing Through Life, it's just really cool to see, while other people are on the walls and like climbing and dancing around it and stuff like that.
That sounds awesome.
So it is a very visually creative spectacle, especially in a lot of the big choral numbers, but then in a lot of the emotional beats and musical numbers, the performers are bringing it, with the close-ups and with all that. Popular's a lot of fun. What is the feeling, or Loathing, as you alluded to earlier?
Yep.
A lot of fun. Especially, the Loathing is a weird one where like I've seen that the dance of that one has gone like TikTok viral, and like it's the like tapping on the books and like doing all this like weird, head bobs kind of stuff. And it's like, that's just fun dance stuff. There are so many. Another big thing, I'm gonna give like a we're talking it from the perspective of, we both know the musical very well. We know like where these characters are going to go in Act 2, and how there are further ties into like Wizard of Oz and stuff. One of the things I don't like, the other biggest thing I don't like about this being split into 2 parts, is a lot of people are already being spoiled on like some of those fun twists and reveals that are going to happen in part 2. Like I'm already seeing like because the movie does a lot of great like foreshadowing setups or moments that are like, that's going to be really fun to see in hindsight kind of thing. But shout out to our friend Cam Hawkins, who went and saw Wicked. And then he himself went and like read a synopsis of like what to expect in part 2, and was blown away by some of those twists and surprises and who characters turn out to be and stuff like that. And it's like, oh man, like that would have been really cool to experience in the theater and not have to wait a year for it. But yeah, already I'm seeing people like posting, side by side comparisons of like, did you know this character turns into this character? It's like, I mean, yes, I did, because I know the musical. And, spoilers for a 20-year-old musical, but like, you didn't have to do that. You could have just let that be a revelation for the people that don't know this a year from now.
Don't yuck their yums.
But I mean, I don't even blame the creators for doing that. I blame the movie for only
splitting
being
it in
a
half.
part 1. Yeah. For not like telling that full story all in one go.
I get that. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Cause yeah, it's like inevitably we live in a culture where, people are spoiling the shit out of Deadpool and Wolverine Monday after it, launches, and all the cameos and stuff like that. So yeah, of course, the cameos that people are going to have to like wait a year for are going to absolutely be like, no, well, here's the cool thing, or it's going to be those clickbait articles of like, here's what this person really, what their bigger stake in the story is, or something like that. But speaking to it from that context, there are, so I won't go into those spoilers myself, but I'll tell you some of my favorite moments, when we're done recording.
Yes, please.
That kind of like tie into some of those like little Easter eggy teases and setups. But like it is so, I mean, going back to like the splash screen of Wicked Part 1 comes on as, we're looking over, Oz in the background or something like that. And it's in the Wizard of Oz movie font. So it's not the Wicked font that you see on the movie posters. It's very much like
the classic.
This is in the classic, 1930s, art style kind of thing.
That's
and
fun.
There's just tons of like Easter eggs and fun little references like that. I've seen like an article that was already like 75, Easter eggs and references in Wicked Part 1. And it's littered with those kind of like cool little nods. A lot of them I caught. Some of them are so like deep cuts, and some of them are like just things that like you won't be able to really see and pick up on screen so much because it's like such a small detail in a costume piece or something like that. But it's the characters or the actors or the director or costume designer have kind of said like, yeah, no, we specifically pulled this as a reference to this kind of thing and that kind of thing. So yeah, lots of love across like this is very much an homage to both things. Dancing Through Life, always one of my favorite numbers from the show in general, and it's probably the standout here, apart from Defying Gravity.
Yeah, those are the two I think that really... Loathing is important to my siblings, that's great. Dancing Through Life has always been like my big number that I love from that show, because it is... There's so much that it's defining about Fiyero and about the world that, Elphaba has to live in. Mm-hmm. It has the part in it, like the speaking part where you have Galinda with her friends pulling that nasty prank on Elphaba, which ends up setting up for their eventual friendship because in her heart, true heart of hearts, Galinda is a good person. Yeah. And it takes
seeing how hurtful her own actions are to realize like I need to fix this.
And what
that is incredibly beautifully realized in this.
I'm so excited. My biggest concern about it was the casting was Ariana Grande. I have seen her do some fun stuff on SNL, but I've never seen her in a role where I was like blown away by her. And so I'm hearing people say good things and hearing you say good things about it, about the chemistry particular. Yeah. That's what matters to me. I need to feel the love between Elphaba and Galinda, because that's what makes the show work. Yeah. If you don't have a genuine feeling of love between these two characters that is first established after a song like Loathing, the turnaround has to work. And if it doesn't work because of the chemistry, it's just going to fall flat. Mm-hmm. It's funny. There are two leads that you need to have chemistry. Most of the time it's the male lead and the female lead. No, it's not. In this case, it has to be Elphaba and Galinda. They're the true leads of the musical. And I'm so happy to hear that they do accomplish that.
Yeah, absolutely. They nail that. They are like, they do the great job of like, yeah, they start out as antagonists to one another. They're, opposites attracting kind of thing. But yeah, after you get that beautiful moment in Dancing Through Life, they become, and then especially into Popular, they become very much thick as thieves. And by the time you get to like One Short Day, when they're going around Oz and getting their nails done together, like the song is happening around them, but like we're seeing like the montage of things that they're doing, and like them getting their nails done is standing out for me because Cynthia Erivo's Wicked Witch very much has elongated like nails as a very deliberate choice, and so like she's showing off the nails, and like you just see Glinda just be like so like enamored with them, and it's like this could have just been something that was caught, when the cameras kept rolling or something like that. It could, like, the scene could have been done, but it's still like just their genuine like friendship playing off that.
Okay.
And then of course, by the end of the of Defying Gravity, when they kind of decide they're going to go on their separate paths for part 2, like your heart breaks.
Good.
That
You
they're
need
not
that
gonna
heartbreak.
be-
You need your heart to break at the end of Act 1. It has to.
Yeah.
It has to in order to make it work.
Yeah. While at the same time, Cynthia Erivo, her performance in Defying Gravity, like, one thing I'll say, and this is like my theater card's already well revoked, I'm sure at this point, but like, I'm not the biggest fan of Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel. Like, I fully respect that they like were the originators of the roles. I don't love either of their voices particularly.
Okay, interesting.
And like some of that might be like Idina Menzel. I also just didn't really like in Rent as much either. Like it's very much like a timbre of voice kind of thing of just like I don't.
Yeah.
It doesn't resonate for me in a great way. Even like and some of it maybe there's also some like rewriting of history due to how many times I had to hear "Let It Go" sung by students in summer camp.
That's fair.
While working at Phoenix Theater.
I think that's much more fair about that.
There's a number of things at play there, but for whatever reason, like their performances are great, but like I've never thought they were the strongest iterations of the soundtrack that I've heard over the years. Like I've heard other Elphabas and other Glindas do their numbers and put their own spin on it in more interesting and more like powerful ways. Cynthia Erivo's immediately is like, oh, I love this Defying Gravity way more than I love the original Defying Gravity.
I just need to know, and this is not a spoiler or anything, but it's just when she hits that's where you'll find me. Look, if you look to find me, look to the western sky. Mm-hmm. Does she? I need.
Oh, it's a fucking moment.
Yes!
I mean, yes! Because so the big thing.
That is my favorite moment of the entire show.
Yeah.
So
because so much of this movie, the movie is 2 hours 40 minutes long, which is longer than the whole play originally, kind of thing. But it's not adding a ton of new to the movie. It's just blowing things up and expanding things and letting beats breathe that don't get to breathe on stage, or establishing shots or stuff like that. So Defying Gravity's big use of that ties in specifically to that moment because it is, okay, she goes off on the broom, but the broom comes like toppling out of her hand as she's falling from, a tower in Oz. And so she has this like moment where she's looking down the skyscraper of glass or whatever and sees like her childhood self kind of thing, and they reach out, and when she reaches out, she grabs the broom and basically catches it just in time to like not fall to her death and go flying back up, and like she flies back up, and that's when this moment hits. So it's like it's not as like fluid as like the song is in the show. It's okay. The music has had a bit to breathe. The lyrics have had a bit to breathe. We've seen Elphaba go through something on screen, and then when the song comes back in for that beat, it's like, oh, she is fucking ready to take it to the whiz.
Hells yeah!
And yeah, it's another very, very powerful moment in the film that I love.
Well, also, what a timing for a movie that like its hidden theme is about how messaging and propaganda control people. And like filter their ideas and their thoughts, and like basically you do mind control on people through propaganda. Mm-hmm. What a wild movie to come out right after an election.
The guy who the con man who came into town and convinced everybody that he knew what was best just because he turned a suffering community dealing with drought and and poverty or whatever, and just said, hey, they're the problem. They're the bad people. Everybody needs to ally against them. Oh, weird that guy, finds such great success. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely too real for a November 2024 release. But hey, it's like to the movie's credit, the movie was saying that 20 years ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We're the society that fucking didn't learn the lesson.
Yep. Wild.
Another thing I saw that just as a tangent on that, I saw an article that was like, Wicked is just the latest version to do the Star Wars prequels, and I'm like, the book came out 4 years before the prequels did. Like,
yep,
yeah, the musical hit around the time between the second and third, or around the time of the third Revenge of the Sith. But like the idea of let's tell a story before the story like predates the prequels. Like that's not the new idea.
There's a reason why we call it the prequels, because there was already prequels that existed.
I think the point of the article, it does do a lot of those those that like, you know, Solo gets lambasted for, of like, oh, here's how she got her broom, or here's how she got her hat, or whatever. It's like, yeah, but those were in the musical from the jump, and like those were direct references that were being made. And that, like, another thing I'm seeing that's funny is a lot of like things being like, do not let your kids read the book. Like, oh, yeah. Watch the musical. Great. The book is not a kid book.
It's not. The book.
Because the book is way more about like the adult escapades of Fiyero and Elphaba or whatever. Yeah, it's way more of like a young adult to adult skewing book.
I mean, I would say even keep it away from young adults. As somebody who read it in high school, my buddy Ben Parrish read it first. And I was like, oh, so it's like, what kind of parts are it? Like, what's the one-to-one? He looks at me dead in the eye. He goes, there's not a lot of one-to-one, but a lot of stuff is happening in it.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, they fuck.
Yeah.
I don't think he said fuck at the time. He was like, they have sex. I was like, what do you mean? Well, yeah, I know they do. No. Like, a lot. I'm like, what? And he goes, it's a thing. And then I read it. I was like, oh, okay. There's a lot of like emotional turmoil around that whole affair too. Because of like the friendship and everything, but like,
yeah, it's fascinating, like seeing the musical first as I did, and then my sister got really into reading the book after the fact and would tell me like, oh, the book is very different, and just being like, oh, well,
her rebellion's much more of an actual rebellion in the book.
Yeah, I'm glad that they like. I'm glad that they did what they did with the musical of like, let's take the idea of the prequel, but then let's have some fun tying it into the movie and like the Wizard of Oz that everybody knows.
Not because the book does a great job of tying itself to the original Wizard of Oz novel, like the original book.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have a lot of tie-ins to the original Wizard of Oz movie. And this is what the musical did, which is why it's great and why it's okay for all ages to watch it.
One thing that I was sad, I'm pretty sure it's been a while since I've seen the musical, but I think I'm pretty sure it's in the Oz Dust scene and not being held till part 2. If it does just come up in part 2, cool, and oh well. I was sad because they didn't have like the lemons and mangoes and pears, oh my, or whatever that line is. That's very clearly like a riff on lions, tigers, and bears.
There's oh my, yeah.
Like I feel like there's a moment in the like, hey, would you go get me some punch? Well, what do you want? They have like lemons, tigers, and pear, oh my, or something. Like I feel like there's a line like that in this show that was not in the movie, and I was sad that was gone, just because I think it's a funny little gag. But at the same time, it's like I get that they. You know,
well, it's a fun little like it plays into the Dorothy. Oh my!
Exactly. Yeah. It's a. Well, I mean, I would say more the repetition, the da 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 oh my thing.
But that's why it works as the repetition thing, but also as an homage. Yeah. It's a multi-layer thing. I understand why you miss it, because it does work on a couple different levels.
Yeah,
which makes it fun.
With the amount of like references they're making to the Wizard of Oz, it's weird that it wasn't in there. So maybe they are going to put it in Act 2 or something like that. Who knows? Maybe. And maybe I'm misremembering it. Maybe it does come in like some later Fiyero and Glinda scene. I'm
trying to wonder what later scene would they have Punch though.
I mean, I can envision one, but again, I don't want to necessarily give spoilers for part 2. But around the celebrations of their, you know, like in Thank Goodness, basically, is I think where you would get it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Would potentially be in there, but yeah. So I might be like just misremembering where that beat hits, and maybe it is still going to be featured. But other than that, it is very true to the world. They do have like a fun little bit of like ad-libbing one-liner-y kind of things, like especially Bo and Yang playing one of Galinda's like little minions.
A twosome that deserved more time, and I'm glad that they have more time to breathe.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're quickly forgotten in the production, the stage production.
Fanny and Shin.
Yeah, they're really thrown. They're prominent for a couple of early scenes, and then they're like thrown to the wolves.
Yeah,
so to speak, or rather, sorry, they're thrown to the chorus line.
Yeah,
at that point,
and they, it's not like they aren't in this too. I think there's a good chunk of it that is like Bowen Yang, because of his SNL status, is like a recognizable. So he's and especially because this is just part one. Yeah, he's around for a lot of this. Especially part two is going to get away from Shiz way more.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, maybe he's not going to be as prominent, or maybe they're not going to be the duo of them are not going to be as prominent in part two. But they have all the fun little bits in here. And again, a lot of that comes in the form of the movie adding just like little moments to breathe for these characters, so you get like reaction shots from them to something that happens or something like that. That's a lot of fun. Yeah, it doesn't add a ton in the way of like actual additions apart from during No One Mourns the Wicked, they do kind of take a break to show us more of Elphaba's like Elphaba's birth is a little bit more, like the magic was going on right at birth kind of thing. And then we also get like a scene of her, like a 6-year-old Elphaba and young Nessa Rose being bullied by, Munchkin kids or something like that.
Helps establish them as outsiders. Granted, that also leaves Nessa's vindictive anger towards her sister of, we were being made fun of because of you. Mm-hmm. It adds to that animosity between the two sisters, despite the fact that there is a genuine, sincere desire to be close to Nessa. Yeah. That Nessa does not reciprocate to to Elphaba, which is the flaw in their relationship that you see exasperated in Act 2.
Yeah. So similarly, like their dad, while still very much like would disown Elphaba if he could, like uses Elphaba as the tool to show his love for Nessa Rose of like look
how badly I treat your older sister, but how much I love you.
Not that so much. I guess this is maybe the biggest change from the movie is like when Elphaba shows up at Shiz, she's not there as a student. She's there because the family is there to see Nessa Rose off, and it's not until her dad says like Nessa's on her way to go be enrolled and see like orientation or whatever, and the dad, the governor's like, go with her. Make sure she's okay. Make sure she's safe. And like Elphaba's like, she doesn't need me to be. Just do it, Elphaba. And so he's using her as a tool to like be protective of Nessa Rose, and just not as a daughter, as a you need to be her bodyguard. You need to make sure she's safe in this unknown place kind of thing.
That's part of the. I'm pretty sure isn't that part of the original? No. She's sent to be a student as well, but it's only because Nessa was accepted.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so it's interesting. So he's saying you're not even supposed to be there as a student.
Yeah.
Go as like an aide sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's basically like even there, she shows up and Nessa's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, Dad wanted me to make sure you're okay kind of thing. And the moment happens where like somebody goes to grab Nessa and take her away, and Elphaba's like power, is unleashed kind of thing. And that's what like draws attention. And like Madame Orville comes in as like,
you got magic.
I know what just happened. I'm going to, grab you and say you're going to be a student here now, and you're going to work with me, kind of thing. And so we get things from there.
Interesting.
But yeah,
does Madame Orville still have like the specialty class that Galinda is trying to get into?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's still there. So in the musical, it's they're both going to be students there, but she only gets in, or she's only allowed to go to help Nessa. She's not there for herself. Like that's kind of the beginning. Yeah. Like when their dad sends her off, he says, I wouldn't be sending you if it wasn't for Nessa needing help.
Yeah.
Which is also like speaks a lot to the infantilization that Nessa has to suffer under.
Yeah.
Which is Wicked's got layers. It has so many goddamn layers. It's so good.
Yeah. Something I will be interested in, and admittedly I don't know enough about the actress portraying Nessa in this, but I've seen like on the red carpet and stuff.
She's in a wheelchair.
She's in a wheelchair. She's wheelchair bound. And
how are they gonna
do the part in Act 2 where she is supposed to be able to walk, and so part of it could be that she has a handicap that does leave her in a wheelchair, but she is able to in small bouts maybe walk or something.
They might do something to do support stuff in CG it around it.
Yeah, I want to say in the Doctor Who 60th anniversary stuff that came out last year. One of the the unit agents was in a wheelchair but also could walk.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if it will be something like that, and it's just one of those like people need to open their minds to what wheelchair or handicap means and kind of thing, and not always look at it in like a 1-to-1.
You're either in it and you can't get out of it,
kind of
thing, / you can be out of it all the time.
That's definitely the like, oh, I'm curious how that's going to play out. And maybe it isn't, and maybe they're going to do that with CG or some other, techniques or something. But yeah, it is a like, oh, like remembering a beat. Like the reason it is usually not done by somebody in a wheelchair in the film or in the stage play is because that person does need to have a moment in Act 2 where they get their magic ruby slippers that lets them walk.
Yep.
So yeah,
that's a major plot point, and it's also a big turning point in the story as well.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot, man. Man, it's so.
I think,
do they? By the way, do they show? When I saw it at Pantages, I felt they did it better than they did it at Gamage. The opening when it's I believe it's part of Nobody Mourns the Wicked, where you get a little bit more of Elphaba's backstory. From Galinda, and she mentions that there's the snake oil guy comes to town.
Yeah.
Do they do it behind covers? Because I always thought that was.
But he is very much like you don't see his face.
But you know it's Jeff Goldblum.
I mean, even that you don't necessarily.
But the musical touchstones? Do they use the musical touchstones there that they then use for Sentimental Man?
Oh yeah,
good.
Yeah, absolutely,
that's your biggest clue right there.
Yeah, it's very much. Even like in Sentimental Man has always been one of those like I treat each citizen of Oz as son or daughter. It's just like looking straight at Elphaba in that moment, kind of like, yeah.
I ran out on your mom and left her to deal with the consequences.
Yeah,
and then your crazy asshole dad basically murdered her.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, he doesn't know that. Like he left kind of like it was a fling for him before he went back to Oz or whatever. And yeah, he doesn't like that's like the tragic thing of his character is that he doesn't know until it's too late. Like that she's his daughter kind of thing. But yeah, they do a really good job of like adapting that part of the number into like a film version. And it is like it's him and the mom kind of dancing, and maybe it's a stand-in double instead of like a de-aged Jeff Goldblum or something like that. I don't know, but it's very much like you only see him from behind, or the camera kind of like is obscuring.
It cheats the way it's supposed to be. I loved it in Pantages. They did it as like a shadow play, like a shadow puppet play
that's
with real people,
in Broadway too,
but it was done that way to make it like so. It's like it's like secretive like and
you
sexy.
Only see, or like
the only color
you see the green bottle.
Yep, that's the only color in that scene.
Like that pose kind of.
Yeah,
thing.
it's such a, and then of course in his Sentimental Man he reenacts that pose several times, and so you get like the visual indicators are there.
There's a lot of fun with that too, and then also in Sentimental Man he has like a little dance break in an homage maybe to that shadow play thing. But also to the man behind the curtain. Like he goes behind a psych basically, and there's a spotlight on him, and he's doing like a little dance in a little dance number break in there, and so it's like a double meta reference kind of thing.
That's so cool.
Lots of fun. I think you will very much enjoy this, despite the fact that it's only a part one. There's still a ton to enjoy in here, and it only leaves me excited for like when we get the rest of it in part two, and when we get some of the like. I can't wait for good. I think that's gonna just break the fuck out of me, because that's probably that and Dancing Through Life have always been like the songs that I gravitate to in this. And yeah, that's gonna just be a gut punch in the face.
For You did not hit me as hard when I was younger, but as an adult, For Good hits way harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because like. I've lived some life now. I like I've had relationships where it's like that is like a thing, a moment that happens that you have to acknowledge that with some people, and it's like that's fucking good. I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm gonna go see it sometime this week now. So.
Yeah, great. Cool. Yeah, so that's
about what, an hour on Wicked.
50 minutes on Wicked. So we got partway through Act 1 kind of ourselves. Yeah, definitely go check out Wicked if you haven't already. It's already doing crazy numbers and great stuff. Another big one that I'm curious to kind of ask you a lot of questions about here is Moana 2, because you went and saw this. I'm very much like I thought about maybe going to see it yesterday, but I was like, I don't want to deal with like mall traffic and stuff like that. So if I go see it, it'll be like Monday or Tuesday, since I'm taking those days off of work and things will have died down a little bit. But I'm not over the moon excited to see Moana 2. So maybe you can like sway me in your thoughts on it.
Sure.
So yeah, what did you think of Moana 2?
Moana 2 is, and I put this out on Blue Sky. I be-skied it out there. No, that doesn't work. I'm not going to, I put out on Blue Sky. I'm like, this is a really good movie. I really enjoyed it, but this does not reach the heights of the first one. At no, like when I watched the first one, I cried like 2 or 3 times. This one, I think I teared up at one point in the movie. That's not like my barometer for how good the movie is, but like that tells you kind of like the character driven, the emotional beats that Moana 1 has. The good news is they are not trying to replicate that with Moana 2. They're not trying to go back to the well and get you be like, hey, here's some songs again for you to like be like, yeah, these are just like the first one songs. There's not a big like you're welcome number. Like they are not going back to the well on that. They're coming with just original stuff, original song, original story. It is much more of an adventure. And I think that kind of is a necessary thing for the story they're trying to tell. But it also has a lot more characters, and it's a lot less character driven. It is much more adventure driven. It's driven for the sake of adventure. There's not as much like focus on a blight or a disease or a plague, kind of like like that her island is at risk because of that. It's different. It's much more about the responsibility of leaders and communities and what it means to for communities to connect with one another. The movie starts off with her, like this is very light spoilers, it won't spoil anything, but the movie's starting off with her adventuring and being a wayfinder, trying to find other islands to try to find other tribes of other people. They know their people are a small part of a larger group, and so they're trying to find that. And what it turns out is it somehow involves a curse, and so it is her kind of having to connect to even further ancestors, not just her personal line, but like, what does it mean to be a wayfinder? What does it mean to take on being the first wayfinder in 1,000 years? What does that mean? What is that responsibility? What does that mean to her community? What does that mean to a larger community? Like she doesn't even have a scope of how big it is. And so it's all about going farther, going beyond how far you've gone. And it's really about growth and kind of those steps forward. So instead of her going out on her own this time, she is bringing an entire crew with her. They don't know where Maui is. And like that's a bit of a spoiler about like where Maui is and everything, but like he, of course, due to promotional stuff, he shows back up. But how he's introduced and how their relationship is much more of a dichotomy of friends who have gone through adversity reuniting than demigod and person. It is like their statuses as like demigod and wayfinder are secondary to their status as friends. But you also see kind of like other people and how they respect Maui or how they think about Maui. It's very different than Moana, who sees him as her friend. This time also, the pig goes on the adventure. Not just, hey, the chicken, the pig as well.
Yeah, I saw that in the promos of like bacon and eggs. Why didn't you bring the pig last time? Kind of, yeah.
That's a line in there. Bacon and eggs is definitively as a great moment. Boat Snack and Boat Snack 2, like, good moments, solid moments are still there, but it is a lot less, and I'm going to be honest with you, it's a lot less of The Rock in this movie, and it's much more of Dwayne Johnson doing an acting role. Like, he's acting as Maui in this.
Okay.
Maui is not the biggest bombastic guy ever because he's been humbled from the events of the first film, and his goal is not to, like, his motivations for trying to do certain things solo have way more to do with his concerns about the danger of a mortal doing it and him as a demigod being able to do it than I'm the best of all time, I can do it by myself. So similar kind of actions, but his motivations are made very clear that he has a deep concern for, and also this is kind of touching back on him originally being mortal. He's not born as a demigod, he was made a demigod by his actions. And that ties into kind of like what does it mean to have legacy. Like he has these tattoos, but these tattoos are part of a story. And the idea of Pacific Islander culture and story and tapestry is something that's a much greater focus this time around as well. Here's another thing too. Music does not hit as well. I don't know if it's because Lin-Manuel Miranda didn't do the music this time around, or it's just the nature of sequels not like bringing a lot of similar musical tones, but doing it in a different way that just maybe doesn't hit as well. But overall, talent-wise, solid.
Yeah, so I have a few, like 3 big questions kind of about this, and I'm curious if you knew or had a sense of any of like the pre-production or the production stuff around this movie going into it. So originally it was going to be a Disney Plus series. And they pivoted about a year ago. Bob Iger basically was like, hey, we're releasing Moana 2 in November kind of thing. So they had to kind of shift it around to take what was originally going to be a Disney Plus series of however many episodes into a standalone film. And I'm curious if that's noticeable in the story in terms of like, oh, now I can kind of see where the episode breaks were or something like that. But that's also, I think, the other 2 questions tie into that of like, is there a noticeable dip in like production quality of like, oh, this doesn't look as great as the last one does because it wasn't necessarily going to be a movie the full time, or
okay, this is interesting.
Does it look fine? And then the music, when it was originally going to be a series, they weren't going to bring Lin-Manuel Miranda back to do songs for that, so they had somebody else come in to do the songs for that.
The reason the musical quality I think makes sense now. Character design wise, it makes a lot of sense. Character kind of like archetype and build out and kind of like synopsis of like who these characters are. That makes way more sense for a series than it does for a film.
Yeah.
Especially since like it's not character driven, it's like plot driven. That goes well for a show, doesn't necessarily lend itself well to a film. So that's fascinating that is, I did not know that about that pre-production stuff to it. But also, I don't think this would work as well as a series. I think that the way that they encapsulate it as a movie is still really good. Like, Moana is one of my favorite Disney movies of all time.
I mean,
Moana 2 not being like up top isn't surprising, but also like, it's good.
I mean, there's also the like, depending on what kind of series it's going to be. I mean, so many series in the streaming era are okay. It's that Netflix thing of like, do you want to watch an 11-hour movie? No. Well, do you want to binge watch 11 1-hour episodes of Daredevil? Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing. Maybe it was 8 half-hour episodes that would have been a 4-hour movie, but when they said we're actually going to pivot into a movie,
that makes so much more sense.
They cut things down, and it's not episodic in terms of like a series. In the way that some,
but that makes sense. Character design wise and stuff like that. Like I said, character design that makes a lot of sense. It works surprisingly. Like that makes a lot of sense for it.
And also, especially if you're bringing Dwayne Johnson back for a movie, he's going to get X amount of things. But if you're only bringing him back for like 2 episodes of a 8-episode series or something, maybe we don't need to pay him as much or whatever that ends up like. Oh. Yeah, we're not going to have to pay him as much because he's not in episodes 1, 2, and 3, but we'll reintroduce him later in the or something like that.
He gets introduced he's introduced early on in the film, but becomes plot relevant about halfway through the film.
Sure. Admittedly, I don't know the ins and outs and like can't speculate on a ton of that, but that was very much like this was announced originally as a Disney Plus series a few years ago, and only last year really got like switched to being a movie. So
early in production,
the Disney animation teams had to kind of rethink and probably restructure. Okay, well, how are we going to need to adjust this to make it work for a movie? But there's inevitably there's probably going to be some like, I guess plot wise, if they were doing this as a movie from the jump, it probably would have had this beat versus this that feels maybe more like, here's probably when episode 1 was going to end, and then we were going to pick up with episode 2.
It's interesting. I don't think you have those breaks, though. Okay. That's what's interesting about it is it's plot-driven, but it's not like plot point-driven. There is definitive moments where how Moana gets her crew to work together. that is not contained like it's episodic. Their interactions with kind of like what they encounter on their voyage is not done through like sort of like feelings of episodic kind of like rotations rather. I could see this like being drawn out to being like a 6 or 7 episode like miniseries where it does feel like a 7-hour movie. But I will say there's a difference between Disney movie character design and Disney show character design. Mm-hmm. There's a definitive drop off in a lot of, and I'm going to say this, investment in developing character models.
Sure.
That is not there for the majority of the cast. Like the majority of the cast does not have enough like personality wise, so much to speak, to really make them stand out the way that you'd probably want them to in a movie. So I think that's a hang up of coming over originally being a series. So yeah, I did not know that it was really supposed to be a series. Mm-hmm. Knowing that now, there's a lot of
some things make sense in retrospect.
Things bleeding through, and like obviously being so late in like you're that late you're only a year out before release and you're making that big of a pivot.
Yeah.
You can't fix everything. I think the things they fix make it very serviceable and make it work really well. Mm-hmm. But this is by far like an adventure movie, not a character driven movie. Like the first movie was about Moana finding out about who she is and who her people truly are. And like, that's an emotional story that's character driven. They could have taken that route with this about like who our people are to a greater community, or what does it mean to break generational curse that keeps our people broken. Like there's a lot they could have done to character drive that emotional beat to it that is not done here. Mm-hmm. It's a plot point rather than an emotional point. And I think it's like glaring, not a problem, but when you want to compare and contrast the first film and this one, that's the difference.
Yeah, it's the like, oh, you don't need those emotional heavy hitting beats if this is just something you're going to throw on and let play for the kids, much like Moana. Like the reason this largely probably pivoted from streaming to a movie release was Disney had a really bad 2023 in cinema in the theaters, and Moana was constantly at the top of like the streaming charts. Everybody's always got Moana playing on Disney Plus, and so they were like, well, we're working on a Moana project. The live action version that we've already like greenlit is still a couple years out. Let's put this in theaters, see if we can make some money off of it, in the meantime. Just make it work, make it serviceable. Doesn't need to blow people away because it's going to get a lot of view time on streaming anyway. But it's the like, oh, we've got a movie, might as well throw it in theaters to see what we can recoup for it. But yeah,
I think it's going to do really well. Like,
yeah,
I think
it's already, I'm already seeing like, oh, it's breaking Thanksgiving, it's going to break the 5-day Thanksgiving, record previously set by, I don't know, something
It's
else.
better than anything Disney released last year. Like, it's better than Wish.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the other thing is like, yeah, this has been like the Disney slot for the last few years for Wish, for Strange New World a couple years ago or whatever. Was it Strange New World? Strange World.
Strange New World.
Yeah.
Or New World?
I think Strange World.
Strange World. I think you're right. It's Strange World. Yeah.
Whatever. That one that like we ended up watching and liking just fine. But yeah,
it was really
we
good.
We didn't watch it in theaters. We waited until it came to streaming.
Yeah.
It bombed in theaters. So yeah, it's been a slot that they've just kind of sacrificed here at the end of the year. As Disney Film has put way more focus on their like live action remakes of movies like Little Mermaid last year.
Oh, dude, don't even get me started on the Mufasa trailer. I saw every complaint you had about The Lion King put on screen, and I'm like, yeah, no, Trevor's right. It's really disconcerting to see mouths move, but no other like emotive expressions on these animals.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a very like dramatically filled line or like a very funny line, but nothing else about the face changes. And I'm like, that's disturbing.
Yep.
That's really creepy. I don't care for that.
Yep.
I heard Trevor's complaints. And I was like, that sounds overblown. I have seen the trailer for Mufasa, and I 100% agree.
Yep.
It is not okay. It is disconcerting. We shouldn't be doing this.
Yep. Be interesting to see how that movie plays out.
I brought that up to my parents, and my parents had like a glass shatter moment, like a breaking glass moment, where they're like, "Yeah, that is true."
I can't unsee it.
Yeah, now they can't unsee it. Now my dad will watch anything Lion King. I shouldn't say that. My dad has never seen anything except the original Lion King movie.
Oh, he hasn't watched, Lion King 1.5?
Nope, he has not. My dad doesn't care for any of that sequel stuff or anything.
I guess that's like, this would be for Moana 2. Does this have the feel of like, oh, in another era, this would have been a straight to DVD sequel? or does it feel like...
No, it has more polish than those did. Like, there's no animation sheets here. They're going all in on the animation for a lot of like the environments and stuff like that. They do a lot of detailed stuff for some characters and whatnot that are like really good. But overall, the I could have seen it, a lesser quality version for sure, straight to home VHS.
Yeah.
Granted, not a bad thing. Revenge of Jafar, straight to VHS.
Sure.
King of Thieves, straight to VHS.
Actually, I think Revenge of Jafar still got a theatrical
Did it still get a theatrical release?
I think because of how big Aladdin had been. But yeah, like your Beauty and the Beast 2 or whatever, like
that went straight
the Enchanted Forest.
That did.
Or
but
the
here's the
Enchanted
thing.
Christmas was just a straight to DVD.
Not all of them were bad because guess what? Aladdin 3, King of Thieves, really, really good. Also turns out, watching it in retrospect, Aladdin's got a hot dad. Just saying, putting that out there.
Did you see Jessica post that recently?
I did not see her post that recently, but I 100% agree with it.
Yeah, our friend Jessica posted something like on Instagram, I want to say, of like, thirsty animated characters. And yeah, one of them, I'm like, that's Aladdin's dad from the third Aladdin movie, right?
He's
like,
Alibaba,
yeah,
King of Thieves.
Yeah.
Which is also an amazing tie-in, bringing in a story from 1001 Nights into, which Aladdin is also a story from the 1001 Nights.
Yeah.
Like one of the best, like, collection of stories passed down through generations as a story itself. Mm-hmm. Incredible stuff. Yeah. Shout out to the folks over there in the Middle East who did that.
It was also like that was the one Robin Williams came back for. So that was the other thing that it really had going for it. Instead of just poor Dan Castellaneta of Homer Simpson fame coming in and being the genie in that second one, which also then unlocked the door for him being the genie in all of the Kingdom Hearts stuff over the years.
Any supplemental, but also he was the voice of Genie in the TV show, the Aladdin TV show. Yeah. So yeah, it worked for him. Good for him. He got that role, but also it made people be like, hey, we really miss Robin Williams.
Well, it's like Robin, as the story goes, Robin Williams did the first one, and basically, like, one of his conditions was don't make the marketing about me. Like, I shouldn't be the central focus, and the marketing was all about him. Yep. So he's like, you did the thing I didn't ask you to do. I'm not coming back for the second one. But eventually, like, mended those bridges and came back for the third one.
King of Thieves was a duo thing because Disney agreed to fund Millennium Man.
Oh, there you go.
And they agreed to greenlight Millennium Man on the condition that he did Genie.
Bicentennial Man, you mean?
Bicentennial Man, thank you. Bicentennial Man, on the condition...
He lived an extra 800 years in Millennium Man.
Bicentennial Man, the agreement was Disney would make the film and promote it and do all the stuff for it.
Yeah.
But he had to come back to do Genie 4, King of Thieves.
There you go.
And the thing about it, though, is the straight-to-VHS market at that time was not a bad thing. Yeah, the idea was if you could dominate that, you would make more money than you would if you put it out into theaters. Mm-hmm. And that was true for like a good 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. It's like streaming killed that market.
Oh, 100%.
And that's been unfortunate because not only
gems have been lost to time.
I mean, like, starting with like the Betamax VHS, like, oh, you can buy these movies and watch them in your own home now, and you don't have to wait for some theater to like rescreen a movie from 20 years ago.
Game changer.
That absolutely opened up new revenue windows, and especially like the whole Blockbuster like rental system, like tons of places made money off of those, rental fees and stuff like that. So,
I mean, hell, Netflix before Netflix was streaming was killing Blockbuster because they said, we'll send it to you in the mail.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't even have to go to the store. Like, Netflix definitely killed that market slowly.
Yes, indeed.
It took them a while, but like once they got streaming figured out, it was like, why do I want to get discs in the mail? I want to stream.
I still think about, because the Safeway that's right down the street from us, one of the buildings next to the Safeway used to be a Blockbuster Video, and that was the Blockbuster Video that like I went to growing up, since you lived right across the street.
If you lived down the street from a Blockbuster like you and I did, you lived in the golden age of a time of media that was like rentals were the thing. You could pay for your rentals with fucking pocket change because it was like, oh, I can only rent it for like 2 or 3 days, but that's all I need for it.
Yeah.
7-day rental for $5.99 for $6. I rent it for a week. What a deal. What a steal. Like, oh, this is a brand new movie, so it's a 2-day rental. Game changer. Like what a game changer rental services were. So yeah, like that's the whole thing. Is streaming's killed so many industries.
Yep.
That like propped up the economy, especially local business economy.
Yep. And alas, no. Any final thoughts on Moana 2 before we switch over to Arcane?
No, I mean, honestly, still solid film. Really love the performances that were done, even though I like some of the characters, like one character in particular, very much a made for TV character who's still ported over here. They all have their contributions to it. It all makes sense. Maui 100% has like this like crazy fanboy. And it's 100% like the parasocial, like we could be best friends. Like Moana is his best friend right now, but like maybe he and I could also be best friends. It definitely plays into that. That definitely would have been a long running bit in a TV show. Short-lived bit in the movie.
Gotcha.
It works though.
All right. Well, then, yeah, let's switch over to Arcane. Tell me about Arcane, which you sat down and watched all 2 seasons, because it's only 2 seasons and it's done now, right? They basically said second season was the last.
Second season's the last for these characters in this location.
For Vi and
Jinx, their story, their saga of Piltover and Zon. That is these 2 seasons. Future seasons will be of the different locations going forward. So
I love that you could have just mad-libbed anything in those things, and I've been like,
no.
All right, Piltover and Zon, sure, yeah.
Yep,
absolutely.
Piltover is the city of progress, but they cast a big shadow for the undercity of Zon. Basically, it's a story about like an exploited, people living in Prosper.
I feel like you could easily just like sub in things from Edge Runners, and I would have
I could a little bit.
I would have no way of knowing.
Yep, could a little bit there, but no, it is really about like an impoverished people who have been made impoverished because they've been exploited by an upper city, and kind of there's an edge of anti-authoritarianism that kind of like is strung through it that I think really helps it work so well. This first season especially, the first season is extremely character driven. Not a lot plot-wise happens, but enough character-wise does, and it's all centered around the 2 main characters, Jinx and Violet. These are, of course, if you play League of Legends, which you shouldn't because it's not a good game, but has a lot of great lore, which is crazy. It's stupid, and I hate it. Because I never want to play League of Legends, but man, do they come up with some they got great writers over there. And like Arcane is really them, and also Arcane is fulfilling a promise that Overwatch kind of teased at us.
Like they actually made the animated things that in their grander world, instead of just giving us little 3-minute Blizzard shorts or whatever.
Yep. That are only given out, surprisingly, weirdly, only at times that Blizzard's in trouble, publicity-wise.
Yeah.
You announce Overwatch 2 years before it's ever going to come out. Weirdly, during a time when there's a lot of anti-CCP sentiment that you're kowtowing towards the Chinese government, and victimizing Taiwanese people. Anyway, we're not talking about Blizzard. We're talking about Riot. We're talking about Arcane. Arcane works really well as a show because these characters are, instead of sticking quote unquote to the lore, they are reinterpreting the lore, which is just a couple paragraphs of main lore story and a couple ancillary long form writings and whatnot. And they're really pulling it into making it feel like a fully lived in world. It starts off with Vi and Jinx very young. The first, I think 3 or 4, first 3 episodes, I think, are just them as children. And it's kind of like that era where they're children and you see some of the politics going on with the adults. And there's a really great deal amount of questions about science, how far science should go. You have the fact that this world is technically a rebuilt world that was built off the back of a giant magic war that kind of nuked the planet. And so magic is kind of not people aren't very excited about it. And you have somebody who believes that he can access magic through technology that he calls hex tech. And it's basically the story. And, but really what people come for that show for are about the sapphic romance, the lesbians, which is great. Overall, I'm joking about that, but the character driven nature means that the romance between Vi and Caitlyn feels very good. It's very real. It happens very slowly. They really slow burn that, but they let you know immediately there's some attraction going on there. There's none of that, all of a sudden they're gay. From the get-go, they give you the hints and touches that one, Vi calling Caitlyn Cupcake for sure has a tone to it that works real well. And then later off, you see that what am I looking for? They both like women. You get that early on in their
predilection.
Predilection, thank you. They both like women. They're both into gals. And you see a lot of teasing. There's like it's good. It's really, really good. We get a lot more cemented stuff into season 2, but it really pays itself off, and it does a really great job of setting that up. Another thing about Arcane is that it's full of tragedy. It's full of what ifs and coulda, woulda, shouldas that break your heart. There is, like, at the core of it, it is about family, and about the family not only that you're born into, but the family that you find, and what it means to build a family around yourself. Due to tragedy, Jinx and Violet are separated. Jinx thinks her sister is dead, and she's dealing with some mental health issues. And her support is kind of like an antagonistic figure, but he's also revolutionary. And so he's a drug magnate, drug kingpin, who's trying to use the drugs as a way to control the Undercity to then launch a revolution, to essentially create a separate nation. And so there's a lot of everybody's cut everybody's cut with cloths of gray. Nobody's black and white. And you see characters who start out as very black and white, really finding the shades of gray in their story as it carries on. Overall, it's super character driven in the first season, and I think it's fantastic. The first season to me is the best fucking TV you're going to watch, that you're going to find. It's really up there, even if you don't give a shit about League of Legends.
So first season specifically, I want to ask, because it won the Game Award for Best Adaptation in 2022 from the first season.
Yes.
One of the things it was up against, already alluded to here, Cyberpunk Edgerunners. Mm-hmm. Do you think this is better, season 1 is better than Edgerunners? Or would you have given the nod to Edgerunners?
Me personally, I would have given the nod to Edgerunners, but I see why people didn't. Mm-hmm. The Edgerunners and Arcane are doing two completely different things with their lore and their stuff. I know why one is like a good adaptation. Like, I would say, this is what I'll say. Arcane is a better adaptation than Edgerunners, because Edgerunners is telling an original story that they've adapted they created from an adaptation of the cyberpunk world. Like, in the original game or in the original stuff, you're not getting a lot of like the Edgerunners. Like, you're not getting Maine's crew in that game. Not until the Edgerunners DLC came out that you got clues and hints towards that and like items and stuff from it. It wasn't already baked in. But the idea and concept comes from an adaptation of the game and that universe, which is why it's a great adaptation. But a better version of an adaptation that takes existing properties, existing characters that people already know and care about, and delivers them in a way that tells a gripping, heartfelt, heartbreaking story. Arcane does that better. Like, so that's why Arcane is a better adaptation. I prefer Edgerunners overall. But there's also a reason why Edgerunners is only ever going to have one season. Because it sticks to its guns and it goes out like
with a bang.
With a bang, in the best way possible. Arcane doesn't do that because it's setting up for a season 2, and this is where my complaints come in. Season 2 is super rushed. Season 2 came out, I think, 2 weeks apart. So it came out in 3 parts, 2 weeks apart. You can tell by the way that it's broken out. You mentioned earlier about Moana originally being on Disney Plus. Can you tell like where things were at? You can tell these are supposed to be 3 separate seasons. You do not get nearly enough time to let these characters breathe in their circumstances. You don't get enough time of them delving into like where they're at post season 1. And even to the part where like Act 1 and Act 2 of season 2, there's a significant jump and change that happens for several characters. And starting episode 4, you don't get any moments to breathe with that. Episode 5 rolls into it. You get introduced to what's happening to other characters. No room to breathe for that. And it really, really hurts it. It feels super rushed.
Just to clarify, it looks like so it's the whole thing came out over the course of 3 weeks, basically.
Sorry, yeah,
like
3 weeks.
3 episodes came out on the first week, then a week later, 3 more episodes. Then the final 3 episodes came out on last weekend.
Yeah. Overall, like, it really, like, it works well enough that it completes its story, and like that's fine. But man, some of these big moments really should have been bigger. And a lot of these moments in between, and a lot of moments that aren't captured in between these big moments, really could have been used to flesh out characters and their motivations and where they're at with stuff psychologically. Like, we're getting 3 seasons pushed into like 9 episodes, and
so that's what you mean is like each of those drops should have been its own dedicated season.
100%. Even if you're
just more stretched out.
You have the big plot points that they need to hit. They're hitting them. They make sense. They work. But you don't get to sit with them. Arcane season 1, at the end of season 1, I sat with it. I didn't start season 2 right away. I just sat with season 1 for a while because that ending like hits and it hurts. And there's something very poignant about that ending that it's like, I had to sit with that for like a day.
I mean, all of this comes down to your viewing preferences or your viewing choices, though. Like, you could have watched Arcane 2 years ago and you would have had 2 years to sit with it, kind of thing, versus like
a day,
sitting down and binging through all these. Which, admittedly, like that's a problem with the Netflix binge model. Sure.
Here's the thing: I know why they definitely did it separated out over those weeks. Then, because you definitely needed that because the whiplash is strong. If somebody watched all of them back to back, the whiplash is strong between each acts. It does not feel or flow like a play or like a typical act structure does. It feels much more like these should have been separate seasons. They want you to care about certain characters that they introduced an episode ago that you don't even know what the hell their names are. But you're supposed to care about them when things are supposed to, like, when things look like they're going to happen to them, you're supposed to care about these things happening to them, and you don't because you knew that person for 30 minutes, or you've known that person for a total of 45 minutes over 6 episodes. It doesn't work as well. Whereas characters that I was introduced to in episode 1 or 2 of Arcane, when things happen to them in episode 8 or 9 of season 1, it's heartbreaking. I don't know what direction, I don't know who I want to win this conflict because I'm torn, you know? And season 2 starts setting it up that way, but then it just goes full speed, burning through material rather than letting you actually like enjoy it. So it's a super big weakness, but like, from the creators, they've come out and said already that, hey, we know people felt it was very rushed, that 2 seasons wasn't enough for the story we wanted to tell. We want the people to know, we hear you, but 2 seasons was all we were given. So it's very clear they're like, hey, this is our pitch for future seasons. And Netflix is like, cool, shrink it down, make it 1 season, go. Like, it's very much in line with a lot of the, like, don't get me wrong.
It's we're going back to the era where Netflix, like Valve, doesn't know the number 3.
Number 3? Well, to be fair, also...
Or the old Netflix thing was like 3 seasons and you're done. Like everything got canceled after the 3rd season, it seemed.
Yeah. Well, because especially after a lot of things didn't even make it past 2 seasons because the jump in royalties and pay and stuff from season 2 to 3 is a big jump.
Yeah, I guess that's probably...
I think that's more accurate. That's why everyone's like, why don't we ever get a season 3?
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, well, because Netflix, it came out years later after they were forced to, by agreements they made with people, with like actors and stuff. They're like, internal documents show they will not give you a 3rd season because that's when the like big money kicks in for the creators and for the actors and stuff.
Yeah.
And we're like, and everybody's like, makes sense. Why did Santa Clara Diet, which was like a very popular show for a lot of folks? I never watched it, didn't care to, but it was massive for people. Why didn't that get a 3rd season? And then you get things like, well, House of Cards got 3 seasons because the initial investment was there. My thing about it is I'm pretty sure I read somewhere that it was like $250 million to make Arcane season 2, or maybe $250 for the entire series.
Yeah, I think it was season 2 specific.
Yeah, season 2. Very expensive. Was there like, we're not going to keep paying you for this? You're not going to get a season 3 because we're already giving you $250 million to make this season.
Yeah.
So that also could have been a consideration that people were making. Everybody has heard for the last year or 2. Netflix is tightening the belt on stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of it either.
Also, to clarify, House of Cards had 6 seasons.
Well, I meant, why did House of Cards get more than 2 seasons?
Yeah. House of Cards was like the second of their like original programming things. I think there was like one real big like original programming / before. Like
Hammer was the first one.
I don't remember what it was, but yeah, the House of Cards and like Orange is the New Black were like the first ones that really like took off, and so those ones lived a little bit longer than a lot of the other ones that were like, all right, we tried it, not giving us the numbers we need, so we cut it because of they built into so many other contracts. Hey, we're going to give you X amount for 2 seasons, and then we'll step it up in the 3rd season. And suddenly, nobody wanted 3rd seasons because the
justification for making it and spending that money was not there on the return.
Yeah, I mean I argue most of those shows never make their money back. It was always about, especially the early stuff, it was always about like building up the library for the stockholders, not for actual cost or like watch time or whatever. Like, because that's a whole other thing of like,
What was the prestige?
How do you divide out, or how do you calculate out how much money this made us, kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like, oh, did people subscribe to it just so they could watch this?
Or is your KPI looking at activations at the start of a show, or like when the show is running, or something like that? And like, there's definitely like, here's the thing: I've always wanted to work at Netflix just for the analytics, just to like be able to delve into that, because that's fascinating. Or any streaming service, like getting into streaming analytics gets really fun when you are able to get access to them. Granted, that would bum a lot of shareholders out, so they don't tell people about it.
That's the thing, is like, they self-report, and it's like, well, that doesn't, like, I don't trust anything coming from Netflix, because you're constantly changing like what you deem as a view.
Yeah.
Oh, something that was, watched for 3 minutes. Okay. So many things can just be auto playing, and so suddenly a thing that I was in the kitchen doing dishes is counting as a view. I wasn't watching it. It's the same, like, with like TikTok views in the millions or whatever. It's like, yeah, those have millions of views because they're a 3-second clip that just plays over and over and over till I,
and sometimes people
till
fall
I get back
asleep
to my phone and skip to the next thing. Or some people pass out and just let TikTok stream for 8 hours in their room.
Listen, man, I have helped many small time creators really help them out on some of their videos. Okay,
Sure.
Because it's the one that lucked out on being the one that I fall asleep to.
Yeah.
By the way, that has come to bite me living with my parents, by the way.
Good. I tried to make it bite you here, but apparently I didn't shame you enough. One of the interesting things, seeing like red carpet stuff for Arcane season 2 recently come up across my feeds, was like, I knew Arcane season 1, Haley Steinfeld, big fan of Into the Spider-Verse, of course, but then also around that time was like Hawkeye was happening.
Yeah.
So like, it was like she was on a good run. She'd done Bumblebee, like the first good Transformers movie in, however long. So she was having a good run. And then this one rolls around and I'm seeing her, but I'm also now seeing Ella Purnell, who I'm like, oh, it's Fallout Girl.
Yeah.
Didn't like, had no idea who she was, previously prior to Fallout. I know she's also done like Yellow Jackets and stuff like that, but like the Fallout was the first thing like I knew her from and could like visually and recognize her. So yeah, so
voice
like,
wise, she's so
seeing
good,
her, pop up on those red carpets, I was like, oh, that's cool that like she's having a great year too.
Yeah.
and she's basically going to be up against herself in this year's Game Awards in
for Fallout versus Arcane season 2.
Yeah,
I'm going to let you know right now, Fallout's a better adaptation.
I think Fallout's going to win. I think Fallout did amazing things that nobody was expecting Fallout to do. So I think it's the lock for this year's.
Totally. And also Arcane season 2, not as good because they don't let these character moments really breathe and live. Do certain character actions make sense between the acts? Yes. But did they really earn it? Not really. Not all the time. And that's what sucks, because season 1, everything is earned by investment in the story and the characters. So even when a character shows up later, even though quote unquote they were hinted at or they kind of show up earlier, like the kid stuff, everything that happens with the kids pays off big time at the end in season 1. We don't get a whole lot of that in season 2. There aren't a lot of payoffs. There's a lot of setups, and then immediately it like does it. There's no investment giving to it. There's no time to let these things breathe and live so that when they conclude, you feel something. To the point where I don't like the ending of season 2. I think the ending of season 2 was meant to be a big finale send-off to these characters that we've come to know over 2 seasons. But I didn't know who half these characters were for the season 2 because they changed so much. Because you're telling me there are these time jumps and these things are happening, but I don't get to live and feel these things. They're just happening. Granted, the last 2 acts are back to back more or less. Like they happen kind of like in sync with each other. There's not a big time gap between the 2. So like maybe you could have argued that could have been 1 season itself. Like, so maybe only 3 seasons rather than 4. I see that argument. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I see the merits of it. Overall, Arcane does a lot. I think season 1 is fucking phenomenal. Season 2, a little bit of a letdown, but it still accomplishes its job. It gets the story done. It gives closure, even though I don't think it's earned. It gives closure to several storylines that get introduced and kind of like cinch up the Piltover Zahn like story. And so now they're teasing we're going to go to these other locations that are in the world and tell kind of their story and their saga of what's going to happen. My hope is for Noxus, because that's where all the baddies live. That's like that's the Empire of Strength, where the strength is built off of vision, might, and guile. Those are like the 3 tenets that everybody in Noxus lives by.
So they're all Slytherins.
First off, we know tracking is not okay, Trevor. Okay, we know tracking is a bad thing.
Sorry, arquebuses.
Here's like, there are good people in Noxus, but their goodness is not out of like, I should say, there aren't really a lot of benevolent people in Noxus. There are good people, but they're not benevolent. They're not good out of their own heart. They believe in something that's like a tried and true method of surviving. These are people who are true survivors of like bad climate, bad circumstances, really difficult circumstances that they've lived and thrived under, and are like, they're very much like a Roman-esque empire if Rome didn't like sit pretty and have a bunch of good things going for it. Imagine like a Rome that started because shit was bad, not because shit was great. Like, they don't have fertile land. They don't have these things. And so they're all about like conquering. But what does it mean to conquer? And what does it mean to be one people? Because originally they were multiple tribes and other stuff like that. And so they are really about like, once you are brought into the empire, you are part of that empire. Your previous culture, gone, we beat it, we win. You now accept our culture. But you are now part of a thriving empire that is also all about like pursuing your personal best. It is very individualistic. And it's like, there's a good thing about that. Granted, there's also a shadow cabal that is run by a bunch of immortals. It's really cool.
I've let you ramble about League of Legends lore far enough. Especially good for somebody that like you've not played League of Legends, right?
I've played it. I played it
you did?
like years ago. Okay. I tell people, they're like, when was the last time you played? And I was like, when the dragon lady, the one lady who turns into a dragon for her ultimate. And they're like, that was like in 2009. And I'm like, that's when I last played it, my guy. Like, I don't think, and if you want to know why, it's because the community is bad.
I did. So I've started just like, I don't know if you've seen the Guess the Game, like daily game. It's like a Wordle kind of game, but it's screenshots of like video games each day.
Yeah.
It's basically like series of 6 screenshots. And with each new screenshot, they also give you like a little bit of detail of like, here's the Metacritic score for the game. Here's the consoles it released on. Here's the genre it came out and like
a little bit of Bless Who. I get you.
Yeah. There's like, 600, 800 days worth or whatever at this point. So I went back to like day one and I've started kind of working my way through. I'm amazed at how many games I've never touched or played, but like based on some of those other context clues I've been able to like get. And I think like League of Legends was one of them. Or no, it was Dota. It was Dota 2. Whereas like this game came out and blah, blah, blah. And by the time I got to like, this game's a MOBA, I was like, Dota 2. It is like, you got it. And I'm like, cool. No idea. Like, no, but yeah, it's.
I couldn't tell you a jack shit about Dota 2. Never played. I played a lot of Dota 1 back when it was a mod for Warcraft 3 back in the day.
Sure.
Played a ton of that, but that's what led me to like, oh well, they're not doing that and supporting that anymore. I'm not playing any of these MOBA games because MOBA wasn't a genre back then. Mm-hmm. And then my friends got into League of Legends.
Back in my day, we called MOBA strategy games. Yeah.
Yep. Anyway. I will also tell you the best MOBA games out there are Smite and Awesome Knots. That's an unpopular opinion from me. Awesome Knots is the best MOBA in my opinion.
I don't know. You played a shit ton of Pokemon Unite or whatever it was.
I did play a lot of Pokemon Unite. Pokemon Unite, very, very good. It's up there for me. For me, in my opinion, it's very much up there. And I think it's better than League for sure. League is also just like a toxic cesspit of like the worst fucking people. And here's the thing. Those people aren't necessarily bad people, but for some reason, whenever they play League of Legends, they turn into the most toxic, terrible versions of themselves. It's a horrible thing to witness. I do not care for it.
All right. Well, that was Arcane Season 2, or Season 1 and Season 2 thoughts. Good Season 1, rushed Season 2, not a huge fan from Cam. Cool. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this week's episode. I was looking ahead. What do you think? Do you want to do next week a like Game Awards prediction episode, Cam?
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds like a good time.
Because as I was looking at like best adaptation and stuff like that, it's like, oh, hey, that's coming out in a couple weeks. Obviously, we're at the end of the year, so we're not playing a ton of new stuff. I'm probably just going to be playing more Baldur's Gate 3 with mods and stuff like that, so don't have necessarily much to report back on for the podcast. So yeah, I think that'll make sense for us to do Game Awards predictions episode next week. So we'll go around, make any additional plugs. You can follow Cameron at revcabot.bsky.social. Anything else you want to shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to make a massive shout out to our upcoming December lineup that Trevor put together. I'm super stoked for everything we got on the docket so far. We'll be talking a little bit about that come up on this upcoming episode of That D Plus Show that comes out this Friday. Check it out. We are, because of course we've talked about it multiple times on That D Plus Show. We have slim pickings when it comes to holiday stuff.
Yeah, we've done 4 or 5 years of holiday programming already, and it's not great. Like, is this all an excuse for me to not have to watch Home Sweet Home Alone sometime down the line? Absolutely, but also there just isn't a ton of other things Halloween or holiday themed, and also it is also irksome that a holiday on Disney Plus is pretty much only Christmas, and it's like there aren't really other avenues. There was a thought of like, oh, we could do the now that it's Hulu-ified, we could go and do like the holiday Futurama episodes because those are fun.
Those are great.
Have like Hanukkah and Kwanzaa nods and stuff like that. But ultimately,
we're not cracking the glass on Hulu just yet.
Yeah. Ultimately decided against keeping it restricted to holiday stuff. There is still going to be a two holiday themed things, but some of it is just going to be, hey, these are the things that are coming out in December, and we're going to do that. You can follow me at trevorjstarkey.bsky.social, and the next one in particular for this week's That D Plus show is going to be Skeleton Crew, the new Star Wars series coming out, I believe, Tuesday night.
It's got big Goonies and E.T. energy from the trailer. So.
Yeah. Checking out the first, I believe it's a 2-episode premiere, so we'll catch those couple episodes and chat about them for Friday. Then after that, the following week is Dream Productions, which is the Inside Out, like Pixar, like little short series. I don't know how many of those we'll do because I don't know how long they're going to be or whatever, but we'll watch a couple of those and do an episode on it.
It's in the vein of those Baymax shorts and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so.
Indeed. The Baymax, the Zootopia. Then we'll finish out the last couple weeks will be holiday themed because it will be a 2-part Simpsons Christmas episode that is Disney Plus exclusive in honor of the 35th anniversary of whatever the first episode of Simpsons is called. I forget the name of it, the one where they got Santa's Little Helper. And then we'll finish up the year. Christmas Day, Doctor Who Joy to the World special comes out. Thursday, we'll sit down and record our episode on it. And Friday, the 27th, will be our final episode of the year. So stay tuned for all of that on That D Plus show. As I said, next week on this show, we'll be doing a Game Awards predictions episode to see kind of who we think's going to win and make our kind of our annual Portillo's bet probably on what we think's going to happen. Even though I couldn't care less about the Game Awards themselves.
It's a fun thing for us to do. We don't we're not deeply invested in it.
I'm very unlikely even going to watch the Game Awards this year. I'll just catch the trailers and stuff that come out.
I'm gonna watch it I'll probably watch it as part of like a watch along from somebody else.
Maybe if anybody's doing a watch along. Yeah, I guess Kind of Funny usually does.
Kind of Funny usually does, and but there's a good chance they might not because they might be there. Yeah. So we'll see who does one. I might watch that through that, or like you catch trailers as they come out on social media. So we'll see.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm just I'm over Jeff's annual advertising awards show. But it'll still be a fun thing to predict and just see where do we think the industry landed on these things? Because you and I haven't voted on anything. I don't think you have. No. So we are predicting where people are laying on things. Yeah. Our Game of the Year list will obviously be very different from what they're going to have there. Yeah, we'll do. We'll have that'll be our January slate. Will be like our Game of the Year, our Movies of the Year kind of stuff,
shows of the year, etc.
We typically feel like we'll have enough games to do a top 10 Game of the Year kind of thing, a top 10 Movies of the Year thing. Shows will probably fall more into the bucket of let's talk about our best of other things of 2024.
I'll talk best anime that I watched in 2024
last year we did the episode that was here's the everything else, and it was our favorite actual play shows, our favorite TV things, our favorite YouTube videos. all that stuff. So yeah, that's what to look forward to the next couple months of programming here. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it. You can follow everything we're doing over at thatnerdysite.bluesky or bsky.social, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. If you like what you heard, please, once again, rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.